people need to appreciate Tim Duncan a lot more because it wasn't like he had the best talent around him starting off. That was not the case. Starting off, David Robinson, as good as he was not nearly the same David Robinson when he won the MVP because he came back from that injury. He was still a good player, but he wasn't a top 5 player like he was in 95 and 96. Over the years, I have underrated Tim Duncan. I didn't see the hype. I thought he wasn't as great as what people try to claim him to be. But as I learned more about basketball, as I learned more about Tim Duncan and his career, I realized that, you know what? Tim Duncan was the real deal. He was actually better than advertised. Now, Shaq, in terms of prime years, he has the edge over Duncan because Duncan, he had a 10-year stretch where he was a top 2, top 3 player in the league. And then by 08, his knees was pretty much cooked. He was still a top 10 player, but he wasn't nearly the dominant force as he was from 98 to 2007. My thing with Duncan that I love about Duncan is he was a two-way player. He was one of the greatest defensive players that we've ever seen. And it's unfortunate that he never won a Defensive Player of the Year, which is crazy because he was always first team all defense. I think he may have 10 or 15 all defensive teams, which is ridiculous, especially in that era when you have KG, when you have all these dudes that he's fighting against. Duncan was also a really good offensive player. He wasn't nearly the offensive player of a Shaq, a Kobe, a MJ, a Magic, a Larry Bird, but he was still a damn good offensive player.
I mean, what was his nickname?
The Big Fundamental. Big Fundamental. He was a damn good offensive player from the mid-range to the post. He had everything that you want. People talk about these like big men today.
Big, yeah.
Absolutely. They talk about these big men today. Go look at Tim Duncan in 2003 against the New Jersey Nets. It's absurd how great he was. He had the mid-range shot. He had the turnaround fadeaway. He had the hook shot on lock. He had everything, every array of moves that you needed as a power forward or as a center at that time, which made him incredibly dominant. It didn't matter if you were physical against him. It didn't matter if you were more athletic than him. He was going to figure out a way to get the advantage versus that defender. And Tim Duncan was fantastic. In the finals, he was fantastic, especially in his prime in 2003 against the New Jersey Nets, 2005 against the Detroit Pistons, and 1999 as well against the New York Knicks. And that was the second year in the league, by the way. And if you look at those rosters, if you look at that roster in 1999, the talent, it's not even close to being as good as it was when you get to 2003, 2005, 2007, 2014. It's not even close. So for Duncan to be able to elevate his teams, remember, before Duncan was drafted, the Spurs were terrible.
Yeah, they were a bottom feeder.
By all means, although David Robinson...
They had David Robinson.
Although David Robinson did get hurt. But they were a bottom feeding team. And then he comes to the team next year, and they're winning 50-plus games. That just shows you the value of Tim Duncan, what he provides you offensively and defensively. And just like with Larry Bird, Tim Duncan came into the league, and he was a top 5 player from jump because he was first team All-NBA his rookie season at 21 years old compared to Larry Bird, who was 23 when he came into the league. So Tim Duncan, people need to appreciate Tim Duncan a lot more because it wasn't like he had the best talent around him starting off. That was not the case. Starting off, David Robinson, as good as he was not nearly the same David Robinson when he won the MVP because he came back from that injury. He was still a good player, but he wasn't a top 5 player like he was in 95 and 96. So I put Tim Duncan at 6. His defense, his offensive capabilities. I also think that he was able to maximize his team a lot better than Shaquille O'Neal did, although I think Shaquille O'Neal had a higher peak than Tim Duncan, and he had a longer just duration in terms of his prime. I just feel like when I look at Tim Duncan and those Spurs teams, he maximized his roster a lot better than Shaquille O'Neal. And I thought he carried a lot of the talent a lot better than Shaquille O'Neal, because when you look at 2000, 2001, 2002, those rosters weren't all that great, and they were still winning 50 plus games. Literally. So Tim Duncan, the carry, we talk about LeBron carrying, we talk about all these different players carrying. Tim Duncan was carrying as well early in his career. It's just late. It's just people, a lot of people didn't watch Tim Duncan when he was in his prime. So people automatically assume that he always had great talent around him. That was towards the later years when he was out of his prime. But when he was in his prime,